Hey guys, Ben Susan here at Simpson Vlogs, and welcome to another What If video. This one is what if World War III started. So, how would it start? Why would it start? How would it become a world war and not just a localized European war? I'm going to tell you all that coming up. But first, sit back, guys, kick your feet up, multiply, have fun here on the channel, and of course, if you want to check out my other channel, my gaming channel, Simpson Plays, that's linked down in the description, along with TikTok, Instagram, Rizzle, and Twitter, my website, simpsonplays.com, and of course the Pokemon cards giveaway links. So then, World War III, it is Armageddon. It's the one thing that no one in this world wants. Einstein famously said he does not know what the next war will be fought with, World War III was referring to, but he does know that the war afterwards, World War IV, will be fought with sticks and stones. That is because World War III would be the annihilation of all major superpowers on Earth, all major powers, all major nations. It would be absolutely cataclysmic for the Northern Hemisphere and parts of the South. Probably the only continents left untouched by such a war would be South America and Africa. They would be the only places that would not be annihilated. And even parts of North Africa wouldn't be able to say that. And South Africa wouldn't be able to say that as well, I believe, if they're a partner of NATO. So the thing you have to remember is the players in this war, the major players in this war are Russia, China, and NATO and its members and its partners. For those of you who do not know what the NATO members partners are, check out my video 2 videos ago where I explain NATO in one of my explain videos. NATO basically comprises of most of Europe. Okay, everyone from Poland to France is basically part of NATO, more or less. That includes major powers like Germany, France, United Kingdom, and the United States. Okay, these are all part of NATO. Not only that, but NATO has, nuclear members, basically. The United States is a nuclear superpower. Britain is a nuclear superpower. Okay? We have nukes, things that can destroy cities, level countries. The United States has many different types of nukes. It has intercontinental ballistic missiles it can launch from its country. It has missiles in its subs. It has missile cruisers. It has aircraft carriers with planes that carry nukes and drop them as bombs. The United Kingdom has nuclear warships in the seas as its subs. Our subs carry nukes. Russia, like the United States, has many different options for nukes as well, and so does China. And they all have a lot of them. Far too many. It's an obscene amount of nukes they have. It's ridiculous. Each of them have enough nukes to bomb the entire globe, the entire surface of the planet, at least 3 times over, and potentially more. Now, the only country on Earth, as far as we know, with a plausible defense against nukes is the United States. The United States has a system that it believes, it's now been properly tested, of course, that can destroy an incoming intercontinental ballistic missile. Now, the funny thing about that is, 1, it's not tested, and 2, Russia have tested a missile designed to beat that. A missile with supersonic capabilities and the ability to swerve and dodge. Now, of course, none of these have ever been tested against each other. We have no idea how one would fare against the other. It could go either way. Another thing deployed with most nukes these days are decoys. When the warhead jettisons from its main body, it will deploy decoys designed to confuse any sort of air defense systems against missiles, even the United States' fancy one. So basically, this is a war that could see the end of mankind. Now, how would it start? Well, it's the modern time. It would have started probably about 4 weeks ago now, with the Ukrainian conflict. If Russia decided that it's not happy with the sanctions it's under and was going to use military might to forgo those sanctions, things get messy really, really quick. if Russia attacks one of the NATO member states, well, all bets are off. Now, I don't believe Russia would do this off the bat. I believe Russia would first try and invade Moldova, Finland, and Sweden. Neutral states it can get to push its borders right up against NATO. Because the last thing it wants is for NATO to not be on its doorstep in a war. If you're going to fight someone, you don't want them to be 50 yards away, you want them to be 1 yard away in front of you, so you can fight them. Now, the Red Army isn't what it used to be. It doesn't have places like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Ukraine as its members anymore, parts of its army. So the Red Army isn't the terror it's been, and we've seen from the Ukrainian conflict it's not as effective as it used to be. So, how would it fare militarily against the combined integrated might of NATO command? The thing about NATO is, even though these are all separate states, once they're engaged and are attacking as NATO, then they have an integrated military command. So it would be a formed structure. NATO would act like one country. It wouldn't just be the United States Army, Britain Army, French Army all fighting alongside each other. It would be NATO, someone controlling at high command one person, delegating tasks to different generals or answering to one person, not different states. Making it act as if it is one state, which would make it quite the effective force. We've seen NATO use stuff like this before, especially Britain and the United States are quite used to working together. Places like Iran and Iraq, where they've been to. Places like Afghanistan, that they've been tried and tested at this integrated structure. Russia don't have that. Russia have one army, so they don't have the possibility of failure, but they're also not as battle tested as NATO. But it also creates another problem. The fact that if NATO has members, now if these members get involved, they're going to drag in other members. One of the most important members to NATO that's not a full member, it's a partner, is Japan. Now, if Japan were to get involved in this war, it drags in China. For those of you who don't understand world history, world tension, there's a lot of tension in the East Sea. China and Japan are basically fighting for trade. At the start of the millennium, Japan was the second largest economy in the world. In 2022, China is the largest economy in the world, followed by the United States. Japan, I don't know where they are, but I'm pretty sure they're not third either. They're both fighting over this. Once the world goes to war, a lot of players are going to try and snatch. And what I mean by that is they're going to try and snatch land. China wants Taiwan. Everyone knows this, they want Taiwan. North Korea wants South Korea. Everyone knows this. China back North Korea. South Korea is normally backed by the United States, but with the United States probably focusing on a NATO conflict in Europe, it would be a nice time to attack both Taiwan and South Korea, which again would pull the United States resources in half. Its fleets would have to be immediately sent to the East China Sea in order to protect Taiwan and Japan and hopefully send troops to Korea. The problem with Korea faces that Taiwan doesn't is to invade Taiwan you've got to come across the sea. It's an island. South Korea doesn't have that luck. It doesn't have that natural geological buffer. It only has land and troops. It's quite likely that China, with its ridiculous population, would overrun them, as they did in the Korean War in the first place, is why we have a split between the two countries. So, how would this play out? Well, it's quite likely that South Korea would be lost, or about to be lost, and someone decides that nukes are necessary. Especially with the fact that in Europe, more certainty that Russia would be losing its war against NATO. We've seen from its facts against Ukraine, it's not that effective a fighting force. Even though it's not going full force against Ukraine, it's not effective. Okay, the amount of resources that they've pulled into Ukraine should have been enough to overwhelm that country in days. They've not done it properly. They've not done it smartly. Against NATO, with that sort of performance, I don't see them standing much of a chance, which would then force Russia, or i.e. Vladimir Putin, to use the unthinkable: nuclear warheads. Now, Russia, unlike America, has a lot of tactical nukes, so it's quite likely at first they would probably use tactical nukes to annihilate our armies. NATO's armies being annihilated would be disastrous and would force our retaliation. Once a nuke is used, you have to retaliate. NATO's policy used to be fire first, but in this case it wouldn't have been, because they would have believed they could defeat the Russian army before nukes being fired, and probably thought Vladimir Putin wouldn't use nukes, but I believe he would. And once nukes are fired, all gloves are off, all bets are off, and it would be the beginning of the end for the world. Nukes would be launched. United States and certainly Britain would probably use their ships to launch its closest nukes into Russia, and certainly onto the Red Army, onto the Russian mainland, and annihilate the country. But of course, Russia are not just going to allow themselves to be annihilated. They would use their own nukes, sending them east and west. Their nukes would be sent far across to the United States and towards France, Germany, all the member states of NATO, and the United Kingdom. Devastating. First military targets and then civilian targets, most likely. But before that, they have to face the United States, its defense system. The defense system probably takes out a lot of the nukes because of the fact that a lot of these nukes are old and are not as fancy as the later models. But the later models, especially that supersonic one, are definitely going to probably get through and annihilate the West Coast. With the United States facing annihilation on the West, it would at least, at the very, very least, launch nukes towards China, just to fulfill its obligations to Taiwan and Korea, and its troops that have probably died over there. And you're starting to see how it's starting to become a problem. Russia sends out nukes towards all aggressors, including all NATO partners, all NATO members, all EU members. The United States and EU NATO members retaliate with its own nukes and send them across to China, who aggressed on South Korea and Taiwan. China has to retaliate by sending its own nukes out towards these countries. And you can see the rolling effect. Now, which countries now are unaffected? You're looking at Africa, South Africa, Mexico, East Asia, Southeast Asia, and South Asia, places like India, Pakistan. This world is becoming quickly annihilated. Now, whether anyone launches nukes at Pakistan and India, I can't tell. I mean, India and Pakistan are both nuclear powers in their own right. They both have nukes. Places like Israel are rumoured to have nukes. Whether North Korea ends up sending its own nukes, who knows if those nukes work. But it would look like the Northern Hemisphere, like I said, is completely devastated. I mean flattened. The fact that I wouldn't be here, no one in the Northern Hemisphere would be okay or left unscathed. If you survive the initial bomb, the nuclear radiation or the blast will kill you. If you manage to survive that, you're not fortunate, you are unfortunate, because there is no one coming to help you. There's no internet, there's no running water, no electricity. You don't actually know where's safe. You don't know where's safe unless you've got access to a Geiger counter, a device that counts radiation in the air. You won't know if you're driving towards your death or towards your safety. A lot of people are going to die very quickly, in terms of months and weeks. It would be absolutely devastating. And the only victors coming from this would be people who manage to stay out of it. Places like Central Africa, East Africa, West Africa, who would probably stay out of the conflict and not face nuclear annihilation. Places like Israel, that whole strip, who probably wouldn't face annihilation. But then again, Israel have close links to the United States. Would Russia drop a bomb there? Who knows? Would China? Who knows? Maybe it's not impossible to think that they would do it out of spite. If you're facing annihilation, why the hell not? China and India don't exactly have the best relationship. India and Pakistan don't exactly have the best relationship. Like I said, it could all kick off. And in my opinion, once you start using nukes, all nuclear powers start using nukes and wipe themselves out. So it's quite likely that even Israel, places around Israel won't exist. All Israel's enemies won't exist. South Asia probably won't exist mainly. India and Pakistan might annihilate each other just for the fun of it. They might decide to start a war because no one can interfere in it. and that's just a bad decision for the both of them because nukes would probably be involved at that point. So you're looking at, like I said, all of the Northern Hemisphere annihilated. The only safe places on Earth, South Africa, South America. They would be the only countries on Earth still with sizable human life and human vibrancy. They would become the new standard of health, education, and standard of living. We would basically throw ourselves back into the 1950s at best case scenario. Worst case scenario is they're all dragged in and we annihilate our entire human population, dragging us into a new dark age. Far worse than anything we could have ever imagined. It's morbid, it's horrible to even think about. Even as I say it, it brings chills. It's the worst thing that could possibly happen. And it's something that can probably happen as we speak. You know, it could come to that point. You know, the sanctions we put on Russia are incredible. And it could force a hand. I hope it doesn't. I really hope it doesn't. I hope it breaks them and they just suck it up. Because what I'm talking about is a real possibility that no one in their right mind could want. You know, it's better to lose than be annihilated. Okay, like annihilation and defeat are two separate things. You can come back from a defeat. You know, you can rise again. You cannot come back from nuclear Armageddon. That's it. That's it for at least 100 years. That's it for you. There are places destroyed, especially with some of the payloads on these nukes now. I've had a look at it, and the largest nuke that I know created is called the Tsar Bomb. It has the capacity to level. If it was dropped on London, it would level all the way up to Manchester, probably. It is a terrifying thought of destruction. This thing has the ability of 6,000 suns and at the core of the explosion. You imagine how hot that is. That would melt concrete. And in fact, it would disintegrate concrete. There wouldn't be anything left. So my plea is to all world leaders, including supported enemy ones or whatever, different ideologies, whatever you want to call it, is do not do this. Because the scenario that I've just talked about is real possibility and would spell the end of everything. It's just not worth it, is it? Right, fair. It's just not worth it. It's better to not do this, to talk it out, sort it out, and diplomacy is our best option because we can't do that. We can't do what I've just talked about. That sort of scenario is cataclysmic. But at least you now know where you should run to. You should run to the tip of Argentina if you can, just like the Nazis did when it was all over for them. Run to South America. It's the only place that's probably going to be safe. Or run to Central Africa if you can stomach that sort of thing. Desert and all that. It's the only places that would be safe during such a war and conflict. I don't blame people for that. Don't run to Scotland. I've heard people say if war comes, don't run to Scotland. That's where our Trident bases are. That's where United Kingdom keeps its sub bases. That would be on the hit list for any nuclear strike. Don't go to Scotland. And don't go to the south. So, in conclusion, World War III would end in complete and utter devastation and annihilation for the Northern Hemisphere, leaving only two continents mainly unscathed, South Africa and South America in the most likely probability. In the worst case scenario, it would leave nothing unscathed. It would be the end of humanity as we know it, and Einstein would be right. We would be fighting with sticks and stones like we were cavemen again. So, on this morbid and depressing note, I'm going to love you and leave you. This has been Ben Simpson on Simpson Vlogs presents What If World War III Happens. And yeah, I'm going to love you and leave you. Make sure to check out the links in the description. You know, we've got TikTok, Instagram, Rizzle, and Twitter. We've got the Pokemon cards giveaway. And of course, we've got Simpson Plays and SimpsonPlays.com. Until next time, guys, write it back again if you want to listen to the Armageddon. And if not, catch me in the next video. Peace.